And order, this second part of the success equation here and productivity equation, is critical because without it, we're just chasing everything. We're saying yes to everything, but we're not actually doing anything or sticking with anything. You know what saying yes to everything but never following through is called? Shiny object syndrome. That's the term. It's like a lot of entrepreneurs. Every week they're doing something new but never stick with it long enough to actually achieve anything. See, in the same way that we need chaos, we need to explore new things, we also need to master order. We need consistency in our actions. That's critical to any kind of success at anything. And this is the second reason why people are not as productive as they want to be. And this is a real big one, so pay attention. See, most people are not doing too little, but they're actually doing too much to be truly productive, effective, and successful. The word more has become such a big word in modern culture, as has phrases like more is more, more. And yes, sometimes more is more, but we also have to realize that often less is more. And sometimes a lot less is a lot more, especially when it comes to productivity, quality, focus, overall achievement, and even well-being and happiness. More can sometimes be the path to self-destruction, while less can help you achieve more, set you free to live a more meaningful, more achievement-filled, and fulfilling life. Now, here's a phrase I've shared with customers and clients in articles and videos online, offline talking to people, for people all around the world. High achievers say no to almost everything. Let me repeat that. High achievers say no to almost everything. And here's the perfect example of this. When Bill Gates first met Warren Buffett, their host for the evening, Bill Gates' mother, asked everyone around the dinner table to share what the single most important factor to their success was. Both Bill Gates and Warren Buffett both gave the same answer: focus. Years later, when Warren Buffett was asked in an interview about what made him so successful, of all the different things he could have said, he said that this was the biggest factor that made his success. Here's what he said. His words, not mine. For every 100 great opportunities presented to me, I say no 99 times. Let that sink in. And now, here are variations of that same premise that he's also repeated, Warren Buffett, or quotes for Warren Buffett, over the years. Here's one. The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything. Or here's another one. You gotta keep control of your time, and you can't unless you say no. You can't let people set your agenda in life. This is the order side of the equation, and it's critical. Else, like so many people, yes men and yes women, you end up with 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 to-do items and projects and businesses that you're building and things that you're working on, and you're so scattered that you never make any real progress anywhere. You're living in the land of busyness. You're totally overwhelmed, lots that you want to do and things that you have on your plate, but you're never truly focused enough to be productive. The focus part of the equation. And so, how do you start to turn this around? Well, you start to say no to things, to options. You start to make choices, hard choices, and set priorities. Another example, Steve Jobs again. When he came back to Apple, after he left or was pushed out of Apple, he came back and he cut down from 350 products that they were producing and selling to just 10. At a conference later that year, he said, and I quote, "When you think about focusing, you think, well, focusing is saying yes. No, focusing is about saying no." He also said, deciding what not to do is as important as deciding what to do. Once again, saying no is not limiting, it's freeing. It's not holding you back, it's enabling you to move forward. Make this mindset shift and your level of productivity and accomplishment will skyrocket. Do this with, for example, a team or an organization around you. I don't know what your situation is, and that will flourish too. And now, here are 3 of the biggest reasons that I've identified for why people usually suck at saying no to things. Number 1, saying yes to requests and things and people is culturally easier. See, saying yes is culturally easier to a lot of these requests that come in. Why? Because there's no friction when you say yes to something or someone's request on their time. Saying yes isn't going to hurt anyone's feeling, at least not in the short term. It's easy to say yes to every opportunity, every new shiny object, every request on your time. That's the path of least resistance. Saying no creates tension. That's the hard part. It creates friction. And so we opt out, instead going for what's easy, the path of least resistance. We say, yes, I can do that for you. Yes, I can attend your event. Yes, I can join your opportunity. Yes, I can give you a couple hours of my time. Yes, I've got a minute to work on this thing with you. Yes, I can do that for you. Yes, I can oversee this project. Yes, I can add this to my list of activity. Yes, I can follow up with this. I hope you get the point. And because of this, a lot of people suck at saying no. And apologies for being so frank about it here, but this is the case. Most people just say yes to every person, every shiny object, every request of their time. And if that's you, then listen to this quote that I'm about to share with you. It's from the great Stoic, Seneca. It's profound and it's also one of my favorites. Here's the quote. We're all the geniuses of history to focus on this single theme that could never fully express their bafflement at the darkness of the human mind. No person would give up even an inch of their estate, and the slightest dispute with a neighbor can mean hell to pay. Yet we easily let others encroach on our lives. Worse, we often pave the way for those who will take it over. No person hands out their money to passerby, but to how many do we hand out our lives? We're tight-fisted with property and money, yet think so little of wasting time, the one thing of which we should all be the toughest misers. Seneca. And so, if this is you, always giving away your time, incapable of saying no, incapable of valuing your own time enough to say no to certain things so you can focus on other things, then you need to master this side of the equation too. You need to train your ability, train your muscle so you can say no, else you risk ending up with a lot of regret later on. See, this is because while saying no may create tension initially, it becomes a respected attitude. Why? Because for those people that just say yes to things, even the things that they don't care about and don't truly agree on, or because they don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, those people end up hurting those people feeling in the long term anyway. They end up breaking their word because they can't muster up the motivation, because of course they can't, because they don't truly care about that thing that they agreed to or said yes to. They are not impeccable with their word, let alone the fact that this person that keeps saying yes to everything, they could end up regretting all of those requests that they said yes to. There must be a balance, and to live a productive and successful life, we need to get great at both sides of the equation and learn when to use which tool to get and create what we want for ourselves and for others. Now, here's the second reason why a lot of people are bad at saying no. We think we can do everything, but we can't. Apologies if this one here sounds a little pessimistic, but I assure you it's not. At least that's not the intention. It's reality. It's the reality that I believe is crucial for our success, our greatness, and fulfillment. See, having worked with people all around the world, from so many different walks of life, I've found that we human beings often confuse what we can do with what we should do or what we can do simultaneously. We don't understand the dynamics at play when we do one thing or another, or we add an activity to another one, or we spend time on some extra activity. We confuse possibility with limitation. We confuse the cost of opportunity. On the flip side, high achievers, they understand this. I call it the paradox of potential, which is this. You can do anything, but not everything. That's the missing piece to the you can do everything advice that everyone's passing around like hotcakes. As human beings, we have endless opportunities to do anything we want pretty much. Most things, outside of certain laws of the universe, we have a lot of possibilities of what we can do, stuff we can create, careers we can focus on, projects we can bring to completion, events we can participate in, the life that we want to live and who we want to surround ourselves with. Endless options. And almost all of these options are available to us. We can do them. As the saying goes, anything is possible, or almost anything is possible. And yes, it's a motivational quip, but it's also real. And scientific research, especially over the last 40, 50 years, validates this. The idea that there is more possible than we believe it is. And I talked about this a little earlier in the possibility streams graphic, that big idea number 2 that I talked about, that's also in the workbook. Now, to really illustrate this for you, for anybody listening to this program, let me ask you this. Could you change careers tomorrow? Technically, you could, yes. If you love what you do or it serves a deep need in your life and you don't want to, then probably you shouldn't. But you could. It's possible. Could you move country next week? Again, you may not want to. Doesn't mean that you can't. You could. It's possible. That's the definition of possibility. Could you pack up your life, change everything, and become a monk seeking enlightenment at the foot of the Himalayan mountains next week or next month? Sure you could if you wanted to. It's possible. Doesn't mean you should, but you could. Almost anything is possible. However, that's not the big secret. That's just logic and motivation and opportunity. The real value is the second part of that phrase. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. That's the humility part. That's the part that makes us realize that there is an opportunity cost to the opportunities we pursue. Yes, sometimes we can have our cake and we can eat it too, as the expression goes, but other times doing A directly counters your ability to do B. And so you must choose, make those hard choices. For example, spending your Friday nights on activity A means that you can't usually spend your Friday nights doing activity B. Or you could do some of activity A, but that means that you're spending less time on activity B. So you're picking, you're making a choice. So once again, you can do anything, but not everything. Nor should you necessarily want to do everything. As part of the value of life is choosing to continually experience what brings us joy and progress before. Just as there's joy in going to a new fancy restaurant that just opened up, there's also joy in going to a restaurant that you've been to like 100 times before and it serves the most amazing dish, which of course you know will be good. Just as there's value in a brand new workout routine, there's also great value in good old-fashioned push-ups and sit-ups and listening to your trusted trainer who's been with you 5 years now. In that same way, just as there's joy and value in saying yes to new opportunities and new projects and new tasks, there's a lot of hidden value that most people don't realize in learning to say no and prioritizing the important things you're already working on. And you must figure out this balance for you in your own life. It all comes back to the big idea, the real secret to radical levels of productivity, achievement, and happiness. The title of this module, Mastering Order and Chaos. You have to figure out what's more and what's less important to you and prioritize accordingly. Things are not equal. They fall into a hierarchy of importance, and that importance is subjective, meaning what's important to one person may not be as important to another. It depends on each person's life experience and their ambitions. It depends, in your case, on your ambitions, on where you aspire to be, what brings you happiness, on the self-awareness you've already cultivated from your own personal growth. However, things fall into that hierarchy. And so we must get clear on this hierarchy of what we value in our lives, what brings us happiness for us and the people we love. Get clear on that and then prioritize accordingly. Sometimes saying yes and embracing chaos, embracing that fear of change, getting out of our comfort zones and saying yes to something completely different, and often saying no and sticking to what we got. That's the key to productivity. Having both of those tools, developing both of those skill sets, and then using them at the right time, the time that's right for you. And this also brings me on to the third reason why we sometimes struggle with saying no. And it's this. Reason number 3. We lack clarity as to what is truly important to us. See, a lot of people say yes to everything, to every new opportunity, every new shiny object, simply because at the underlying level, they just lack clarity. They don't know what they want, so they just follow the flow and do whatever. They're like in this river and they're just following the current. They never focus and as a result never achieve too much. They are not productive. And the core reason, once again, is clarity. That's this first reason here. And of course, clarity is a big word in this program, as I'm sure you've seen already and you will continue to see, because it's everything. It literally defines success. And on top of that, it's what will enable you to say no to distractions and yes to what's meaningful to you. It will make this whole mastering chaos and order thing here, the success equation here, much easier to implement. Because to say no to something, you need two things: clarity and courage. And you need both of these things. Clarity, you need to know what you want, and courage, you need to pursue what you want, but clarity helps with courage, and courage helps with clarity. What happens if you have clarity, but you don't have courage? What happens when you know what you want, but you don't have the courage to pursue it? This is something we haven't covered yet. You end up presenting yourself often, or the people who ask you to, for example, say yes to this and this and this in the long term. That's a frequent consequence. Confining to the rules, the social norms, and not living for ourselves, that could be a consequence. It's like a good example here is parental pressure. And kids, for example, growing up in some cases, not always, but in some cases to become lawyers and doctors and engineers because that's what they want. Their parents want them to become those things, not them. They don't like those things. They don't engage with that career path, but they do it for their parents only. And they grow up and they end up resenting their career choice later on, and sometimes even resenting their parents for forcing them down that path because they didn't have the courage. Again, part of it is the parents and educating the parents, and part of it is the people who are in that situation making that choice. Because it's not just parents, it's society. Part of it is making that choice, learning to be courageous within ourselves. And again, clarity helps create courage, and courage helps create clarity. Now, having banged on about the importance of clarity, here's why clarity is so important for almost 2 modules now. Instead of that, I'm going to give you something practical in this module here. It's something that I was originally going to put in the next module as part of the 360-degree productivity system. I was going to cover it then, but I decided to pull it out, put it in this second module, and share it with you now. It's a strategy. It's part of one of the 8 processes as part of the system for developing and cultivating greater and greater levels of clarity, which, as you know, help define productivity, define success, make it easier to say no things, help you master this framework of mastering order and chaos. And this process here, which is one of the 8 processes, as you'll learn in the next module, is something that takes about an hour to 2 hours every month, once a month. And you do it at the beginning of each month. And it's the first thing you complete as part of the system. And it's a monthly clarity process. That's the title here. Monthly clarity process. Or as I labeled it in the 360-degree planner, which I'll talk about in the next module as well, the monthly clarity pages. Either way, whatever it is, it's a process for monthly clarity. And it has 3 parts to it. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to explain these 3 parts, and then you're going to do it. At the end of this module, you're actually going to take time and complete this, invest an hour or an hour and a half, and actually complete this for yourself. It's a powerful process. It has 3 parts to it. So let me share what these 3 parts are so you can live this and you can start implementing this every single month at the beginning of the month to develop greater clarity and help boost your productivity and success. So you can pause, by the way, right now, because there's also a worksheet for this exercise, and it'll be available below this audio player in the members area, or it'll be inside the workbook. So if you don't have that pulled up right now, make sure you pull it up if you can, so you can see these 3 phases, these 3 parts of this process as I take you through it. Okay, that said, process part number 1, phase number 1, creative visioning. Creative visioning. That's the first part of the monthly clarity process, labeled creative visioning. And this is an opportunity for you to take 20 to 40 minutes and visualize and dream and brainstorm and write down all of the ideas you have for what you might want in the future across all areas of your life. And this is crucial. You see, a lot of modern day goal setting starts right with, oh, what are the attainable, measurable targets for the next 30 days? And while that's important, before that, it's valuable to think big picture, to let yourself dream, to let yourself think big and explore possibilities, to immerse yourself in possibilities. First, the big picture, then you break it down into specific targets. And so for that first part here of this monthly clarity process, what you're going to do is you're going to go area by area of your life, starting with your personal ambitions, who you want to be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, then onto social ambitions beside yourself, intimate relationships, family, parenting perhaps, your friends and your community and society, then on to creational and professional ambitions, your career and finances, your mission and legacy. And you'll find out on the worksheet all of these 10 areas will be written down, and you'll have boxes for each one that you can fill out and you can write down there. And you can spend a few minutes just going through each of these areas one by one. You can close your eyes, you can visualize. This is what I do at the beginning of every month. And you just go through and you clarify what's important to you. And of course, at the end of this module, you're going to be doing this, but there'll be a audio recording I created that specifically guides you through it. It's about an hour and a half, and it literally guides you through it. And as you listen to that, I stop speaking while the track keeps playing, and you start to write down, and then I keep talking and brief you, and I guide you through the whole thing. As if I'm basically sitting right next to you, I create a audio recording like that. So you don't need to worry about the specifics here or the structure of it. That'll be as part of that. You just play that clip and you follow through for the hour and a half, and I walk you through. Stop this, go on to the next one, go on to the next one, think about this, maybe you think about this, maybe think about this. So that's included. And at the end of this module, once again, you're going to be doing this. You're going to be doing all 3 parts of the monthly clarity process. That will be the exercise for this module. But remember, this first part here is just a dreaming part. It's just about writing stuff down and just about brainstorming. It's not about, oh, well, maybe this won't happen, or hey, how can I make this more specific to what I'm working on right now? No, this is just big picture. That's the first part of the process, creative visioning. And that, of course, isn't enough within itself. Dreaming isn't enough. It's a valuable first step to clarifying what's important to you, but it's just a first step. That's why we also need phase part number 2, stepping stone targets. The second step to true clarity, the second step in this monthly clarity process, is then taking those big picture ambitions and also brainstorming what are targets that you could have. What are monthly goals, for example, that are measurable and specific that could help you ultimately reach those things, those feelings, that situation in your life? You take that big ideal picture that you visualize and you ask yourself, what do you want to achieve? What targets can I set for myself for this upcoming month that will help me get to that ultimate ambition? What are those goals that you're striving to hit? What are those goals that I can pursue? What are the targets that will help me get there? That's the second part of the clarity process, stepping stone targets. So as part of this process, I'll then take about 15 minutes after the creative visioning to do the second part here and get clear and brainstorm monthly targets and select which ones are important to me. And in this phase, yes, you want to make these 1 month stepping stone targets as specific and measurable as possible. Again, we're looking for alignment here. You go and you take 40 to 60 minutes, creative visioning, part 1. You ask yourself, what do I truly want to achieve? And you visualize it all in all areas of your life. Then you go on to step 2, you make it super specific. You put your specific hat on. You write down what targets could I set myself for the upcoming 30 days, for the upcoming month that will help me move towards the right direction, towards my ultimate vision. And you write down specific, measurable things. For example, if during the first phase, in the health and fitness section, you visualize yourself ripped and muscular and playing sports and running marathons, and right now you are very, very far from that physically, then hey, next part, write down, okay, over the next month, that's my big picture. I know where I'm going, maybe, I don't know, a few years from now, but over the next month, what's a target I could set for myself that would be in alignment, that would be congruent with this ultimate vision that I want? And you can write something down. Maybe it's losing a certain amount of weight. Maybe it's eating in a certain way. And here you make it specific and measurable, and you set that monthly goal based on that ultimate ambition. You don't set it on your current situation and you go, oh, right now I'm overweight, and so I could just continue to be overweight. No, you look, hey, here's what I want. Is it possible to lose weight? Yes, it's possible. Can I run a marathon even though I'm overweight right now? Yes, I can. It may take a number of months or years or even decades to get there, but if I want it, I can do it. So what's the target of the next month? And you make it simple and specific and measurable here. That's how those first two parts here come together. But there's also a third part. This is the third part of the monthly clarity process, and this is a very important one. It's called productive inputs and outputs. See, while goals and targets are great, they are often incomplete. Even if you go, hey, I'm going to lose 5 kilograms this month, that's incomplete. Specifically, you're missing this third part of clarity here. This is because losing 5 kilograms or earning 100K this year or writing a book, they're great goals, but they are not actionable within themselves. The reality is that nobody has ever taken the action of losing 5 kilograms. It's not an action, it's an output. Losing weight, having magical moments in a relationship, earning money, these are all outputs. What's actionable is the inputs. Eating healthier, exercising regularly, cleansing your body, educating yourself on health and nutrition. These are the actual actions you take, the inputs that create the success, the output we desire. And that's why we have this exercise, this third part here, to bring specificity, practicality, and a start to finish clarity to your targets and ultimate ambitions. Don't worry if you're overwhelmed right now. It will all make sense. It will all come together within the next 5 to 10 minutes as I explain this more specifically, more properly, with more examples. So as part of this third and final phase here, you're going to take a further 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning of every month. You complete all 3 parts of this process at the beginning of a month, and you're going to copy your stepping stone targets from phase 2 into your productive outputs column. And if you can see the worksheet that's in the workbook here, that'll make it easier for you to understand this. And then you're going to take 15, 20 minutes, however long you need, to define the exact inputs that you need to plan and schedule and do to create these outputs. And that's a very quick rundown of the 3 phases that make up the monthly clarity process, which you do once per month at the beginning of the month for an hour to 2 hours. That's it, once per month, and you develop and cultivate clarity, and it becomes automatic, and you're progressing and clarifying what you want, which helps with productivity and all the other things we talked about. This is a practical system, or one of the 8 components of the full system you're going to learn in the next module to help you develop this one, clarity. Clarity which helps with all the other stuff. Now at the end of this module here, so in about half an hour or so, you're going to spend an hour or so and go through these phases. You're going to experience firsthand the first part of the productivity system, this monthly clarity process. But before that, I want to expand on the terminology and the instruction a little bit, especially that third part called productive inputs and outputs, as that's not usually talked about in conventional goal setting. It's something that a terminology I kind of created for myself to really put this into perspective. So I'm going to share a little bit more about that here, and I want you to really grasp this. So let's back up a little bit, and I want to share and really clarify this for you. See, you need clarity. And you need clarity of not just what you ultimately want, the outputs, but also you need clarity of what you need to do to get what you want. That's called your productive inputs. And there's always inputs and outputs to achieving a goal. So it's not just enough to write down what you want, the output, you need to also clarify what you need in order to get there. And this forms big idea number 3. And again, check the workbook. You'll see a graphic of this to illustrate this that you can follow along while I explain this. See, let's take an author, for example. The main productive output that they focus on may be the number of great books that they write and publish. However, as I covered before, nobody sits down to write a book. Not me, not you, not Hemingway, not anybody. A book is an output. It is created by inputting things inconsistently, and then you form a book. You do not sit down to write a book. Rather, you sit down to write words that turn into pages, that turn into chapters, and you sit down to write. That's the input. You brainstorm ideas, you write, you edit. Those are the specific inputs. The book is an output you're aiming for. It's an outcome, just like losing a certain amount of weight or gaining a certain amount of fans on your Facebook page or whatever. That's an output. It's a result. It's something that you want, but you can't put on your to-do list. It's part of the mechanism. The input, what you put in, is what you also need to get clear on. So if it's not writing a book, that's an output. The input is brainstorming ideas, researching topics, spending time actually sitting down and writing and coming up with great chapter titles and section titles and a great title for the book and book cover and editing it and improving. Those are the specific inputs. Those are the specific things you can put on your to-do list, like 1 hour of writing on chapter 4. That's a specific thing you can sit down and you can do. You cannot write a book, but you can write words on that topic in that chapter. Those are all inputs. They are actionable things that you can add to your calendar and spend time on. And by putting in all of those inputs, you get a book as a result. Now, another example. If you're a songwriter, the number of songs and albums you release may be one of your productive outputs, one of the targets that you have for yourself, monthly or yearly, your goals. And what are the productive inputs, the actual things that go into creating new songs? Well, it's actually probably things like sitting down and brainstorming ideas of new songs, or reaching out and connecting with people you can collaborate with, or actually sitting down and writing lyrics, and lots of them, writing lots and lots of lyrics, and then selecting which of those lyrics are best, or beats. Of course, I'm not a musician, but the basics are pretty well basic, and I hope I'm doing a good job communicating that. And now, what should that musician make time for? Not just hope that free time shows up, but actively schedule and block out time for. Well, all of this stuff, all of those productive inputs, that's the stuff that you should put on his calendar, because those are the highly productive activities. Now, I could go on and on with different examples, but I hope you're starting to get this. Clarity is identifying what you want, breaking that down into what are the productive outputs, the actual goals, the targets, the things that you would like to get out of it, and then identifying what are the productive inputs, the things that you need to actually sit down and do that you can put on your to-do list that will help you get those things. When you clarify all of that, now you can take action. See, checking email, while useful, is usually not a highly productive activity, as for most of the things that most people spend their time on. What is highly productive? Your productive outputs and your productive inputs once you've clarified them. If you want to be a writer, you should spend at least 1 to 2 hours each and every day brainstorming new ideas, sitting down and writing, as that's most likely the most productive thing you can do based on, I'm assuming, a typical goal or typical goals for a writer. If you want to start a business and maybe you don't have one yet, your productive output, the first one of them may be, hey, have my first product or service that I can sell. The productive input at the time may be scheduling time to brainstorm what products you could sell, what products you could create, what stuff you can source, what services you can provide. Productive outputs, productive inputs. Then once maybe you have a business, your productive outputs and inputs will change and they'll adapt as your goals adapt, as your ultimate vision for what you want adapt. Plus, you can have multiple outputs and inputs that you've identified and that you're working on. For example, for me, as an author, a speaker, a content creator, a marketer, someone's on a mission to create education and spread things to help make people's lives better, happier, freer, here are my productive outputs. It's things like number of books I've written and great books, articles and videos I've put out, audio clips and audiobooks, courses like this one right here that I'm creating for you, coaching programs, events that I'm running, keynotes and speeches and meetups. Basically, all the different forms of conveying information, those are my productive outputs that I've identified myself. All different mediums of delivering information and guidance and instruction and transformation from one person to another. Other outputs includes things like how many people is my work reaching, the number of customers and clients in my database, the tangible and intangible results that I get from customers and clients, and the case studies that brings in. Those are the productive outputs that I focus on. And as I shared, these are targets. These are not actionable items that I can schedule, but they are the outputs that I'm working towards. And out of that, I've clarified my productive inputs. I've identified for myself when it comes to my professional life, my business, my work, my mission of changing education. I've identified what are the inputs, what are the active things, the activities that I should be spending time on that are high purpose and high focus, that fulfill these two pillars of productivity under the best use of my time. And as a case study here are my top 3 productive inputs for my professional life. Number 1, learning and mastering personal growth, forming new distinctions, coaching people, giving advice, and basically getting into the trenches and learning as much as possible and mastering my craft. This is a critical one for me as it's a foundation for me going out there and learning and curating information, seeing what other people do and finding what I can implement into my own life first and foremost, interviewing people, diving deeper into what makes that difference for people in their lives, being a guinea pig in my own life and testing ideas and principles and strategies to see how they work. Productivity ideas and motivation strategies and psychology concepts, bringing that in and seeing how I can apply that stuff. Doing and reading, for example, research papers that most people are never going to read because they're too long and too boring, and finding ways that I can take the essence of that research and simplify it and put it into, for example, YouTube video that someone can watch even though they wouldn't read that initial research paper. All of that stuff. Learning, mastering my craft, becoming the example. That's the first one for me. That's one of my main productive inputs. It's the foundation for me, and so I know, and so I schedule time to do this thing because I know it's a highly productive activity. Email may be in most cases a waste of my time, or YouTube videos or social media may be a waste of my time in most cases, but this is highly productive. This on the purpose scale that we talked about in the last module is up there. It's at an 8, it's a 9, it's a 10. Highly purposeful and the line of what I ultimately want. Now, the importance of setting this as an actual productive input that I regularly schedule into my calendar really clicked for me with this specific one when I read a number of articles about Warren Buffett and how he manages his time. See, one would assume that one of the world's richest and most successful investors of all time, Warren Buffett, that he would spend as much of his time as possible just picking companies to invest in and rejigging his investments when new opportunities come up. But when asked about how he spends his time, you actually find that while profits and investments are, of course, some of his core productive activities, there's something else. Warren Buffett spends most days in the office learning. He spends time reading books, reading about the market, educating himself further, looking for companies that he's invested in and researching them further, or looking for new companies to invest in and learning about those, learning about industries and markets and the fields that he prefers to invest in. His first core productive input before even investing in anything, and one he spends the majority of his time on based on the interviews available about him, is learning. That's the basis for him. And so, hey, I told myself, if it's good enough for the world's most successful investor of all time, it's good enough for me. I modeled this pattern here, and you can do the same if you want as well. I looked at what he does, how he spends his time. Of course, I'm a natural learner. I always have been. I've always loved reading and educating. But when I read all of this, it made me schedule it far more rigorously than before. I became far more structured in how I learn and specific topics that I would geek out about. And I would take that one topic, which, for example, I really want to improve on, and I would order like 10 books and 5 courses and go to free events and all this stuff. And I'll do all of that stuff and really narrow in and master that topic over that period of time and then move on to something else. I became far more scheduled and structured in that when I learned this. This is because this is my kind of big domino. If I do this one right, it makes everything else that I do, like making these courses and making videos and doing interviews and doing speeches and all this stuff, it makes it all easier. This is one of my big dominoes, and it's one of my productive inputs. That's number 1. Number 2, developing content and curriculum, or updating existing content and curriculum through products and services. My productive input may be world-class books and courses and products, but the input is the actual time that I spend working on these programs, on making them world-class, on scripting them out, and that I schedule. Almost every single day, with rare exception, I'm spending at least 2 or 3 hours working on the next thing that I'm working on. The next book, the next article, the next program, the next way of sharing information in one of these mediums that I've identified to pass along information to someone and serve that person. And this stuff takes time, but I invest that time because this isn't busy work anymore. This isn't mindlessly checking emails, scrolling social media, watching cat videos, or other distractions. This is one of the core things that aligns with what I ultimately want. This is my actual productive time. It's one of the highest uses of my time, my most productive work, the highest purpose value on the 2 pillars of productivity assessment. The top right-hand corner of the productivity matrix, high up there on the busyness to productivity scale, all those assessments I shared in the last module, this ranks great on there. So I spend a lot of time developing curriculum, updating curriculum, packaging it into books and products and courses and all this stuff, and I spend a lot of time on that. That's my second productive input. And number 3, marketing. Generating marketing ideas and angles and customer acquisition and working with customers and selling my books and programs and all of this stuff. See, I decided very early on that this was going to be my other specialty. One is helping people create change and transformation in their lives. And the second one is marketing. I didn't want to be an underestimated expert that nobody knows about, who has the best content but nobody's there to view it because they suck at marketing that content. No, I decided early on that marketing is one of the critical keys to the mission that I'm on. If I can't market this information and get it so people are excited about listening to it, like you're excited listening to this program, then what's the use? And so my third productive input is the time I spend on marketing. Bringing it to the world, bringing what I got to the world, getting fans, getting customers, gaining reach. See, information is useless unless there's someone on the receiving end of that information. And I learned early on that build it and they will come is not good business or mission advice. They won't come, not unless you share it with the world. So the third productive input that I schedule almost every single day is marketing. Exploring new ways of reaching more people with what I got so I can impact more lives with the specific things that I'm good at. See, I suck at a lot of things I'm very incompetent about, and I want to learn from other people those things. But I have picked certain things that I have become great at and will continue to get even greater at, productivity being one of them, creating change in people's lives, understanding people's psychology, and helping them break old patterns and create success in a specific area of their life. Helping people overcome phobias and fears, things like that. I've identified specific things and I've become great at those things, and now I want to share that with the world so people can benefit from my information just like I benefit from other people's information. So marketing is my third productive input. And those are my productive inputs and outputs. I've identified them, I've clarified them, and I scheduled them. So I'm spending my time productively, doing the things that truly matter and the things I love to do, like creating this content and recording this program for you. These are the productive inputs and outputs that align with the vision and the mission I have for where I am and where I want to go. And they are what I continue to prioritize. Yes, I still check email. Yes, I still spend time on social media. Still longer meetings sometimes than I would plan on. Still do busy work sometimes. But I aim to spend as much of my time on these meaningful activities professionally, and I'll share personally later on in one of the later modules, because all of these big ideas relate to work and outside of that to your personal life as well. I still do many of the other things that other business owners and authors and speakers do, but it's not about that. It's about what you prioritize and the percentage of time spent on these truly meaningful and needle-moving activities. These identified productive inputs. That's the key to productivity. If you haven't been paying attention fully, switch that attention on right now, because this part here is profound. Because I'm summarizing everything I just covered here. You want to increase the percentage of time. Let me repeat that. You want to increase the percentage of time that you spend on your productive inputs, once you've identified them, of course, as these are the vital few things that are best use of your time. They are the quote unquote 20% of actions that give you back 80% of the rewards, as per the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule you may have heard of. In fact, probably if you did any other productivity program, you'd find the 80-20 rule in there. It's become kind of a household thing in the self-improvement industry. But let me repeat that one more time. You want to increase the percentage of time that you spend on your productive inputs and outputs. See, once you develop clarity of what you ultimately want, you then break it down into targets. You break it down into specific things. For me, it's like number of books, number of articles, things like that in my professional life, in the mission I'm on. And then personally, it's other things that I measure. And then once you have those outcomes, those outputs you've identified, you identify inputs. What's it going to take for me to get there? And you identify, because those are the highest and best use of your time. And then your goal isn't to just eliminate everything and just do those, but it's to increase the percentage of time you spend on those things, as those are the things that have the highest purpose rating as per the assessment in the last module. Increase the percentage of time you spend on your productive inputs. Now, how do you do this? Well, let me give you a quick tip right here. Tracking. Track how you spend your time now, like you did in the last module, in the finishing exercise of the last module, as it will give you awareness, and that opens the door to increasing this percentage. See, most people think they are productive, but if they were to time themselves and add up how much time they actually spent on their top productive inputs, their most productive vital activities in a typical 8, 9, 10, 12-hour workday, they would be horrified. I know this because I did that and I continue to do this. See, when I started about a number of years ago with this, even though I would work 8, 9, 10 hours per day, I was shocked to see at the end of the day, I had only spent maybe 60 minutes or 90 minutes of all the time actually working on my core productive inputs. The rest of the time was spent reacting to people, the demands from the environment, all of this stuff, which was busy work and it needed to get done, but it wasn't these core productive inputs. And like I shared at the beginning of this program, that's actually pretty high when you bear in mind that the statistics show that the average CEO spends only 22 minutes per day on those productive inputs and outputs, those core things that move the company forward. But even my 60 to 90 minutes was pretty appalling. I would literally spend 8, 9, 10, 12 hours sometimes at a computer working on the business, but most of it was lower level priorities. But this motivated me. I was committed to get those numbers up, and I worked on it. Now, in a regular day, I'll spend between 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5 hours on average on my productive inputs. Sometimes less, sometimes more, but that's the time I would spend. And the times when I spent 10 or 11 or 12 hours each day working on my productive inputs, my core productive activities, those were, for example, the 2 weeks in which I wrote 200-page books, start to finish, in just 4 or 6 days. But I'll talk about that. I'll share that case study with you later on. That's how extreme productivity feats like that and how you can do that as well. But my challenge right now to you is this. Number 1, clarity. Go through the monthly clarity process, commit to it, to do it every single month. You'll learn the whole system in the next module, but commit to that and identify what are your productive outputs and the productive inputs that will move the needle for you and get you those productive outputs. Then, number 2, you can do this. Give yourself the uncomfortable yet critical realization of how much of your work time you actually spend on productive activities, on your highest level priorities right now. Track it like you did at the end of last module, that assessment. Look back at that assessment or track it in a different way as well now. And then number 3, increase the percentage. If you take away nothing else but this one thing from this program and implement it over the next 6 to 12 months, I promise you will have gotten much more than you invested in this program back in value. If every single day, every week, all you did was just track how much time you actually spent on your productive inputs, and your goal was just, how can I spend more time today than I did yesterday, this week than I did last week? And you just increase that from, say, 10% of your time to 20% of your time on your core productive activities. From 1 hour per day, like I used to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours per day. From 30% of your time to then 40 and 50%. You'll be astonished if you do that at how much you can get done and how much meaningful progress you can create each and every day, week, month, year. If that's all you take away, you'll get massive value from this program. So live this understanding. And I'm going to repeat these 3 steps real quick for you. Number 1, clarity. Number 2, tracking and self-awareness. Number 3, increase the percentage.